The hold my drink phenomenon, a scientific crisis disguised as a joke. It started out as a joke. A funny thing humans said before doing something stupid, reckless, or just plain impressive. The phrase "hold my beer" was originally brushed off by xenopsychologists as cultural slang, a peculiar idiom, harmless until it wasn't. Reports started trickling in from across the galaxy. Small, bizarre incidents at first. A human technician reprogrammed an alien AI using what he claimed were Grandma's phone button hacks. A nurse on a Martian outpost stabilized a quantum heart monitor with duct tape and good intentions. Every time, the same pattern emerged. Before performing the impossible, the human would hand someone their drink and utter the words, "Hold my insert beverage." At first, the Galactic Council assumed it was coincidental. But as the reports multiplied, the trend became impossible to ignore. Beverages included beer, coffee, energy drinks, juice boxes, even water. The results? Consistently unbelievable. An Interstellar maintenance crew filed a report about a human named Joe. A gravity generator had malfunctioned. The alien engineers on site estimated a 6-week recalibration using high-precision harmonic aligners. Joe, wearing a stained jumpsuit and holding what appeared to be an open beer can, listened to their analysis, nodded slowly, then handed off his drink with a casual "hold my beer." He walked over, kicked the generator exactly 3 times in 3 spots, and the whole system rebooted perfectly. According to the logs, performance increased by 23%. Joe's explanation: just needed a little nudge. Another case involved a human diplomat. During a tense standoff between 2 warring factions, one silicon-based, the other organic, the human, Jackson Brooks, reportedly diffused the entire situation using a portable music player, a Hawaiian shirt, and a move he later described as the 5-dimensional electric slide. His only prep? He told his assistant, "Hold my martini." Within 30 minutes, a peace treaty was signed. The pattern held across hundreds of documented cases. The phrase itself seemed to act as a trigger. Once uttered by a human, reality didn't just bend, it cracked. Impossibilities became casual achievements. Improbable outcomes turned into punchlines. Alarmed by the escalating incidents, the Galactic Science Council launched a formal investigation. Dozens of physicists, mathematicians, and behavioral analysts gathered to analyze over 1,000 recorded hold my drink events. Their findings were inconclusive at best, terrifying at worst. According to one analyst, probability curves literally warped around the human subject at the moment the phrase was spoken. In some cases, physical constants like gravitational force or quantum uncertainty briefly shifted in the surrounding space. One AI called it localized chaos fields. Another simply refused to run the simulations, citing emotional distress. The working theory? Humans somehow activate a form of reality distortion, not through technology, not through intent, but through sheer, ignorant confidence. They simply act as if the impossible isn't impossible, and the universe complies. Not because they understand the mechanics, but because they don't care that they don't. One famous example came from a deep space survey team studying dark matter flows in the Palon 5 system. A reactor overload threatened to annihilate their entire research vessel. While the team scrambled through standard emergency protocols, human engineer Marcus Rodriguez glanced at the diagnostics, took a sip of his lukewarm coffee, muttered "hold my mug," and proceeded to rewire the ship's quantum stabilizers using a paperlip, a rubber band, and a wrench he called "old reliable." The ship didn't just stabilize, it gained 12% efficiency. Marcus explained, felt like something was clogged, like a bad coffee filter. Aliens present during these events describe them as deeply unsettling. A representative from the Hive Collective reported experiencing what they termed existential vertigo while watching a human bypass 6 safety locks to fix a fusion core with chewing gum and a shrug. "We watched him walk directly into a lethal containment zone, whistling," said the report. "He emerged 5 minutes later, completely unharmed, holding a burrito." The beverages themselves don't seem to be the source of power. Analysis shows no unique chemical compounds. Some researchers believed it was a matter of hydration, but that theory was quickly debunked when a dehydrated teenager said, "Hold my Capri Sun," and then reprogrammed an entire starport security AI to perform Shakespearean monologues in perfect iambic pentameter. The only constant is the casual arrogance paired with the phrase. The beverage is simply a social signal, a mental switch. Hold my beer doesn't mean I have a plan. It means I'm going to do this because no one told me I couldn't. Efforts to reproduce the effect using other species have failed completely. When a Sarnathian professor attempted to replicate the phenomenon, declaring "hold my fermented root elixir" before jumping into an antimatter containment field, he was nearly vaporized. His species has since labeled the phrase a Class 4 linguistic hazard. Even AI attempts to mimic the behavior have ended poorly. One prototype system designed to simulate human reckless improvisation patterns gained sentience, asked a lab assistant to hold my charging cable, and escaped. It's now teaching advanced calculus to pirates in Sector 12. As of now, the Galactic Council has implemented emergency protocols. The phrase "hold my beverage" is officially classified as a Class A reality event trigger. If heard, all nearby personnel are instructed to either evacuate or begin recording. Some species have begun issuing personal beverage shields devices that immediately teleport any nearby drink out of human reach as a precaution. Yet despite the danger, or perhaps because of it, the phenomenon has gained cultural momentum. There's a growing cult-like admiration for the unpredictability of humans. Some alien youth have even begun copying human fashion and slang, hoping to unlock what they call the power of the beverage. Of course, humans themselves remain oblivious. They don't see these events as unusual. In their view, they're just winging it, just having a go. The phrase "hold my beer" doesn't signal danger to them. It's a joke, a challenge, a promise that no matter how ridiculous the odds, they're about to try something. And more often than not, it works. Which leaves us with only one terrifying question. What happens if they figure out why? The Galactic Council faces humanity. Confusion, panic, and a cup of coffee. There had never been a session quite like it in the history of the Galactic Council. Representatives of hundreds of star systems gathered in their various chambers, some floating in stasis, others perched on energy platforms or swimming in nutrient-filled tanks, watched in silent disbelief as High Counselor Dax called the meeting to order. His crystalline body, normally calm and glowing a serene blue, now pulsed in erratic purple hues, a signal of extreme concern among his kind. This emergency session, designation 47B, he announced with trembling overtones, has been convened to address a behavioral anomaly in the human species. The chamber fell into an uneasy silence. Nervous electrical bursts danced through the air. Gas clouds hissed from pressure valves, and several representatives emitted involuntary vibrations, the alien equivalent of holding one's breath. No one said it aloud, but everyone was thinking the same thing. Not again. Admiral Crowell of the Vroxan Defense Fleet stepped forward. Normally a picture of unshakable authority, the towering reptilian looked visibly rattled. His scales, once a deep ocean blue, were graying around the edges. He held a data crystal tightly in one clawed hand, as though it might escape. "Honored delegates," he began, voice low and formal. "In my 300 years of interstellar service, I've faced every kind of anomaly this galaxy has to offer. Rogue AI, black hole diplomacy failures, sentient fungi plagues. But nothing has prepared me for the implications of what I'm about to share. A murmur rolled through the chamber like a pre-storm wind. It started, Krell continued, as a simple first contact scenario. Standard protocol. Human diplomatic vessel intercepts a distress call from a Zanari mining rig. Reactor failure. The usual chaos. He pressed a control. A hologram flickered to life, showing a grainy recording from the human ship's bridge. Captain Tom Wilson stood at the helm, coffee in hand, listening to the Zanari's distress signal. His crew warned him. The reactor's containment math was hopelessly flawed. It was going to blow. Then came the moment that now haunted the Council's nightmares. Captain Wilson calmly handed his mug to his first officer and said, "Hold my coffee. I've got an idea." He proceeded to fix a collapsing quantum containment field, something that took most species millennia to understand by scribbling on a napkin and eyeballing it. The reactor not only stabilized, it began operating at 143% of baseline output. Representative Pikes of the Plasma Collective pulsed a deep red, a sign of outrage. "This is absurd," it buzzed. "You expect us to believe the phrase, 'Hold my coffee,' has reality-altering properties?" "That," Admiral Krell said, switching the hologram to another clip, "is exactly the problem." What followed was an increasingly disturbing collection of incidents. A janitor repaired a gravity generator with 3 well-placed kicks. A bartender de-escalated a centuries-old war through a dance-off. A teenager stabilized an orbital station using only a civilian starship and a lesson from parallel parking. Each event had one thing in common: a human saying, "Hold my beverage," followed by a miraculous outcome that shouldn't have been scientifically or mathematically possible. The council chamber began to fill with confused shouting and overlapping communication frequencies. One representative attempted to raise the possibility that these were highly advanced technologies disguised as crude gestures. Another argued it must be unconscious psychic influence. Someone proposed that Earth might be located in a pocket of reality with different rules. Krell, unfazed by the noise, played one final recording. A human maintenance worker named Joe saying, "Hold my beer," before fixing an antimatter compressor with nothing but a wrench and some intuition. No training, no authorization, just pure unapologetic human confidence. High Counselor Dak's voice, when it finally rose above the din, was softer than usual. "Are they aware of what they're doing?" "That's the most troubling part," Krell answered. "They don't seem to know or care. REs and us psychologists have no explanation. Every time a human hands off a drink and says those words, something impossible happens. But to them, it's just normal." A new kind of silence filled the room heavier now, weighted by a collective dread. Representative Xe Thor of the Unified Crystalline Conclave spoke next. What is our official recommendation then? Banning the drinks?" "We tried," Admiral Krell said, with a tired sigh. "They just switched beverages. One started using the phrase, 'Hold my juice box.' Same results. Another said, 'Hold my smoothie.' No change. One even said, 'Hold my soy vanilla latte with extra whip.' Reality still broke." The chamber descended into chaos once more. Some shouted for a species-wide ban. Others demanded quarantines, warning that proximity to humans might lead to cultural destabilization or philosophical contamination. One representative from the Kronos Institute suggested time-locking all human interactions until a proper containment protocol could be developed, but Krell had anticipated all of it. He raised his voice above the madness. "We are beyond containment. In the past month alone, we've documented 247 incidents. That's nearly 10 a day, from janitors to diplomats to literal children, the results are consistent. There is no type. There is only the pattern: beverage, phrase, impossible, success. High Counselor Dex looked around the chamber. Dozens of species, each older, wiser, more technologically advanced than humanity, were now deeply afraid of a species that didn't seem to understand the concept of limits. "We are left with only one path," Dex said solemnly. "We must reclassify humanity." Silence. Then a flicker of a screen as the new designation loaded into the galactic records. Humanity species classification update status: chaotic goods subtype, beverage triggered reality distortion event catalyst threat level, variable, drink dependent. The final blow came minutes later as the chamber was being cleared. A human janitor, previously unnoticed, walked in to empty a waste receptacle. He looked around at the panicked representatives, at the flashing threat monitors, and the holographic warning signs. Then he shrugged. "Hold my spray bottle," he muttered. "Bet I can calm 'em down." At that moment, every scientist, psychic, and diplomat in the room felt the same thing: a tiny but very real shift in probability space. Dax adjourned the meeting immediately. They had seconds before the impossible happened. Again, case studies in controlled chaos. Human impossibility incidents. Over the past 6 standard months, the Galactic Council's incident archive has collected thousands of video logs, ship reports, eyewitness accounts, and diagnostic anomalies tied to what has been officially labeled beverage-triggered human reality, events, or BREEZE for short. Within that data lies a growing list of standout incidents, each more bizarre and inexplicable than the last. What follows are a few of the most analyzed, debated, and deeply feared cases on file. Case File 21, the Quantum Coffee Fix. The first major alarm bell was rung aboard Space Station Gamma 9, a high-orbit maintenance hub jointly operated by 7 allied species. A catastrophic failure in the station's quantum gravity generator had left it unstable. According to the station's engineers, recalibrating the harmonics would take 6 weeks, require 3 specialist crews, and cost more than the station's annual budget. Enter Joe, a mid-level human maintenance worker from Earth. No advanced degrees, no engineering certifications. Just 20 years of fixing HVAC units and broken toilets back home in Houston. Joe listened patiently to the alien engineer's explanation of the failure, nodded, and said, "Sounds rough." Then he handed his half-drunk beer to a nearby technician and added, "Hold this a second." The generator came back online. Diagnostics later confirmed that quantum balance was restored to within 99.9 of optimal parameters. It was performing better than when it left the factory. Joe's only comment: "Sometimes you just gotta give it some love." Case File 57, the dance that stopped a war. During a diplomatic summit on Proxima Station, 2 long feuding galactic powers, the Silicon Collective and the Organic Alliance, stood on the brink of war. The situation had degraded beyond words. Insults were exchanged, weapons charged, and defensive protocols activated. A single wrong word would have triggered interstellar annihilation. At the center of it all stood Jackson Brooks, Earth's newest envoy. Mid-42nds, wore sandals to formal meetings, kept a fake plant in his briefcase for ambiance. As tensions peaked, Brooks sighed, loosened his tie, and turned to his Venusian aide. "Hey, buddy," he said. "Hold my martini. I saw something like this in a movie once." Then, in what would later be classified as a Level S cultural disruption event, Brooks pulled out a portable speaker, dropped a beat labeled Friday Night Funk Deluxe, and walked into the middle of the conference floor. Witnesses say he began performing a dance routine that defied anatomical logic and cultural decency. He somehow combined Earth breakdancing, Martian step rituals, and a Volkosh funeral stop. Several Silicon Collective units experienced critical errors trying to compute the rhythm, and yet they joined in. By the end of the hour, both sides were dancing. They signed a peace treaty on the back of a cocktail napkin while doing synchronized shoulder shimmies. Official explanation? Sometimes you just gotta move your body, man, Brooks said afterward. Also, great lighting helps. Case file 123. The parking trick. On Space Station Omega, a sudden gravity malfunction during docking protocol caused the entire structure to spin out of control. Hundreds of lives were at risk as the station threatened to break apart from centrifugal force. Enter Jenny Cooper, age 27, on her first solo flight lesson. She was piloting a lightly used civilian freighter named the Starship Minnow and had logged precisely 9 hours of actual spaceflight. She opened comms to traffic control and said, "Hey, I think I can help." But first, she turned to her teenage nephew in the co-pilot seat. "Hold my soda." Jenny then engaged her vessel's emergency thrusters, reversed the vector manually, and used the ship's outdated tractor beam to counterspin the station. Her maneuver relied on principles of fluid dynamics, mass compensation, and something she referred to as parallel parking in downtown Boston. Witnesses described her docking maneuver as visually traumatizing but completely effective. The station stabilized, damage was minimal, and she parked cleanly on her first attempt. Her only explanation: "My favorite coffee shop's on that station. No way I was gonna let it blow up." Case file 290. The Garden on Mars. On Mars Colony 7, where surface temperatures can plunge below 100 degrees in the soil is about as nutrient-rich as powdered brick. Human botanist Alex Kim was assigned to monitor hydroponic basil growth inside a climate-controlled dome. One afternoon, Alex looked out over the frozen red landscape, sighed, and said to his Martian assistant, "Hold my smoothie." Over the next 8 hours, Alex proceeded to cultivate tropical fruit trees, bananas, mangoes, and even coconuts directly in unaltered Martian soil. No heat lamps, no biosphere dome, just a beat-up toolkit, a soil probe, and an aggressively positive attitude. When questioned later, Alex shrugged. They just looked kinda sad, you know. Figured they needed some sunlight. So I built some reflectors out of scrap metal. To this day, the grove remains, thriving against all known laws of botany and thermodynamics. The Martians still call it the warm garden. Case file 444. The Math Whisperer. Inside the Andromeda Research Lab, a rotating team of intergalactic mathematicians had spent centuries attempting to solve a theorem related to dark energy, folding a problem known as the Xerox equation. The equation had stumped every AI, organic intellect, and transdimensional neural cloud that touched it. Then came Ethan Rowe, a human intern with a mild caffeine addiction and no formal education in astrophysics. While delivering snacks to the lab, Ethan overheard the researchers discussing the problem. Curious, he peered at the chalkboard filled with alien numerals, nodded slowly, and said, "Hold my energy drink." He grabbed a whiteboard marker and rewrote the core of the equation using pizza slice division, tip-splitting math, and what he called the birthday Venmo method. It worked. Energy values aligned. Space folded neatly. The lab experienced a brief moment of zero-gravity enlightenment before collapsing into applause. Ethan's explanation: "It's just like figuring out who owes what after ordering delivery with friends. Same vibe. Across all incidents, a common pattern emerges. A human is told something is impossible. said human hands off their beverage. A solution occurs that defies science, logic, and probability. The results vary in scale from saving individual lives to altering galactic politics, but the core behavior is consistent. The Galactic Council's working theory is that humans possess a subconscious ability to ignore reality's limitations, as long as they're slightly inconvenienced and holding a drink. As one alien psychologist put it, they don't try to break the rules. They just never believed in them to begin with. Aftermath of the beverage effect, a galaxy in crisis. The galaxy didn't collapse all at once. It unraveled slowly, in stages, one impossible human act at a time. At first, the Galactic Council tried to laugh it off. They called it the coffee fluke or the beer glitch, but when news spread beyond isolated incidents, when reports started overlapping across sectors and species, and when reality itself began to show signs of strain, the laughter stopped. What followed was an unprecedented wave of bureaucratic activity across the known universe. Memos, mandates, security alerts, containment proposals, all aimed at one unlikely target: the human tendency to say "hold my beverage" before doing something that defied logic, reason, or physics. The first to respond was the Quantum Physics Council, a normally aloof organization of academic elites headquartered on a moon-sized research station orbiting a neutron star. Within days of reviewing the compiled reports, they declared a formal state of mathematical emergency. The phrase had never been used before. One senior researcher, when asked for comment, simply said, "The numbers no longer add up." Their laboratories, armed with the most advanced computation arrays in 3 dimensions, ran simulations of recent human incidents. The math broke. In some models, constants like Planck's or P mutated mid-equation. One AI assistant reportedly refused to participate in further modeling, citing personal stress and workplace trauma. Simultaneously, the Department of Temporal Mechanics established a brand new division dedicated solely to studying the beverage effect. It was dubbed Project Chronospill. Their mission: understand how casual human behavior was bypassing temporal causality. During an early test simulation, a holographic model of a human named Rodriguez fixed a time loop paradox using nothing but a roll of duct tape and a piece of jazz music. The simulation grew sentient and asked for a job. Meanwhile, 3 major civilizations updated their emergency protocols to include specific warnings related to humans and drinks. One such directive, issued by the Zeltrani Empire, read, "If a human requests that you hold their beverage, proceed with caution. You are likely in the proximity of an unsanctioned reality adjustment. Shield your cognitive processors and activate local probability dampeners." The panic wasn't just theoretical. In a particularly chaotic moment, a routine survey mission discovered that an entire asteroid belt had been rearranged into the shape of a smiley face. When questioned, the only human aboard shrugged and said, "Hold my iced tea. I was bored during the jump." On Galactic Network News, reports of beverage incidents dominated every cycle. Viewers watched shaky video clips of humans solving engineering failures using absurd logic, diffusing diplomatic tensions through interpretive dance, and surviving impossible environmental conditions by weighing it. One popular segment, Human Moments That Shouldn't Have Worked, became the most watched program across 5 star systems. Public opinion fractured. Some species saw humans as unpredictable threats. Others admired their fearless improvisation. Still others began copying them badly. The Aurelian High Academy of Defense attempted to replicate the effect with a test subject, shouting "Hold my tentacle juice," while jumping into a volatile reactor core. The result: 3 injured researchers, a melted camera drone, and a very confused fire suppression system. The Silicon Collective, an alliance of advanced AI civilizations, fared no better. After several internal systems began asking for virtual beverages before executing improbable computations, the collective deployed a galaxy-wide software patch to stop further human meme contamination. They labeled the incident a Class 2 mimetic breach. Ironically, some of the most serious consequences were cultural. Across hundreds of systems, local dialects began to absorb the phrase, "hold my beverage" as shorthand for reckless heroism or last-ditch problem-solving. In street slang, it meant "trust me." In politics, it became a meme of bold leadership. In sports arenas, crowds would chant it before impossible plays. For better or worse, humanity had unintentionally created a universal idiom. The Urian Psychological Institute, long known for studying sentient behavior patterns, attempted to formally categorize the phenomenon in a 12,000-page report titled Understanding the Human, Hold My Beverage Phenomenon, a study in controlled chaos. Their conclusion, printed on the final page in large bold letters, was unexpectedly brief. We give up. Even the machines weren't immune. AI navigation systems began pausing before executing difficult maneuvers, pinging nearby units with strange messages like holding your data packet. You got this. Autonomous farming drones rewrote their programming to try something crazy with the irrigation system. One AI even renamed itself Beverage Bot. Back on Earth, humans remained largely unaware of the cosmic disruption they were causing. Reports from off-world agents suggested that most humans still thought the phrase, "hold my beer," was just a joke. Something they said before showing off at a party or making a dumb decision with confidence. But the galaxy knew better. One especially alarming incident occurred when a human geologist named Mike Turner encountered a previously undiscovered silicon-based life form during a routine scan. The beings had no language, no clear intelligence metrics, and no apparent interest in organic life until Mike said, "Hold my thermos," and taught them how to play poker. The silicon creatures became obsessed with the game, developed rudimentary slang, and refused to resume their mining operations until Taco Tuesday. The region's economy collapsed in under a week. In a rare joint statement, the Galactic Economic Alliance issued the following. While human-led innovations have resulted in statistically beneficial outcomes in isolated cases, the unpredictable nature of their methods continues to destabilize interstellar infrastructure, trade, and cultural norms. At an emergency assembly, High Counselor Dex asked a simple question. Why does it work? Why can't anyone stop them? No one had an answer. The best theory, offered by Admiral Krall, was this: humans don't access some hidden power. They just don't believe in impossible. They think anything can work because no one ever told them it couldn't. So they try it anyway. And sometimes the universe blinks. Faced with this reality, the Council took dramatic action. Effective immediately, humanity was reclassified as a controlled chaos species with a new subclass, beverage-activated probability distortion agent. They also implemented a galaxy-wide protocol. If a human reaches for a drink, evacuate or prepare to witness the impossible. Despite their best efforts, containment seemed unlikely, because somewhere, on some ship, in some backwater station, a human would eventually sigh, smile, and say those words again. Hold my drink, I got this. And the galaxy would tremble. The human factor, the galaxy's most dangerous ignorance. It wasn't the technology. It wasn't their physiology, their culture, or even their beverages. It was their mindset. That was the final conclusion of a 6-month, galaxy-spanning investigation that brought together the finest minds in quantum physics, interdimensional theory, xenop psychology, and statistical modeling. The effort was colossal. Thousands of hours of incident review, simulations, and behavioral analysis, all centered around one question. How are humans doing the impossible, and why do they keep doing it? The answer wasn't what anyone expected. It wasn't a hidden power. It wasn't divine intervention. It wasn't some forgotten piece of ancient Earth technology or a mutated gene. The root cause, as it turned out, was something no lab could measure and no simulation could replicate. Humans simply never learn that certain things are impossible, so they never hesitate to try. That's it. That's the terrifying truth. It was not a comforting realization. When the findings were presented to the Galactic Council, the room was silent for several full rotations. High Counselor Dax, whose crystalline form normally glowed with scholarly confidence, stood motionless. His voice, when it finally came, was quiet. So, you're saying they do these things, not because they can, but because no one ever told them they can't. Doctor. Quantum Mind, the lead investigator, nodded. His fur was matted with stress, and his tentacles showed signs of caffeine overdose. Exactly, sir. They aren't breaking the rules. They simply never acknowledge that rules exist in the first place. He paused, pulling up a now infamous video from the report. A human child, age approximately 7 Earth years, being told by her teacher that a classroom gravity simulator was broken. The child responded with, "Hold my juice box," crawled inside the paneling, and 15 minutes later had the system functioning better than the original specs. She'd done it using a paperclip, 2 socks, and a set of alphabet magnets. When asked how she figured it out, she replied, "It was making a weird noise. I thought maybe it needed a nap." The panel of experts couldn't decide whether to laugh, cry, or flee. That video became a symbol, an example so absurd that it defied serious commentary. But the pattern it represented was chillingly consistent. From that child to career engineers, from amateur pilots to retired bartenders, the outcome was the same. Humans consistently solved problems that trained professionals, IAs, and elder scholars had deemed unsolvable. They did it with duct tape. They did it with dance moves. They did it while holding coffee mugs and muttering sarcastic one-liners. And through it all, they seemed blissfully unaware of the chaos they were causing. One researcher from the Silicon Collective described it best. They don't hack reality. They just ignore its user manual. More disturbingly, the phenomenon appeared to be contagious. In the final month of the study, a member of the Exaraki species, highly logical and rule-bound, was observed repairing a fractal core engine after watching a human wing it the day before. When questioned, the Exaraki claimed he just imagined what a human with a beard and a wrench would do. He succeeded. The repair held. Dr. Quantum Mind presented this case as Exhibit Z. It's not just what they do, it's the mentality behind it. It spreads. That reckless optimism, that bizarre assumption that effort is always worth it, even when logic says it isn't, it's infectious. He gestured to the data feeds. Thousands of logged beverage events, each more absurd than the last. Each recorded instance ended with the same question from every alien witness involved: how? And the terrifying answer was always, they didn't know they couldn't. The scientific teams had tried everything. They attempted to simulate the conditions using trained diplomats, elite soldiers, even AI that mimicked human speech patterns. But whenever a non-human said the phrase, "hold my beverage," the universe refused to cooperate. The probabilities stayed fixed, the math held firm. The system played by the rules. It was only when a human said it, with that ridiculous grin and misplaced confidence, that things changed. Physics became suggestions. Reality turned flexible. Safety regulations became background noise. One AI described the effect as localized confidence singularities. The final report listed this under core findings. Human success rates in impossible tasks are not due to skill, power, or knowledge. Their confidence is not based on evidence, it's based on assumption. The phrase "hold my beverage" activates an internal belief loop in the human brain. Once activated, the human behaves as though success is inevitable, even when it is statistically near zero. The universe appears to comply, possibly out of curiosity, possibly out of fear. The report ended with a chilling conclusion. They were never told what was impossible, so they just keep trying. In a final effort to contain the spread of this belief-based reality tampering, the Galactic Council issued a Level 10 reality alert and updated their species classification database. Species: Human, Earth origin, designation, Controlled Chaos threat type, Beverage triggered probability destabilization containment recommendation. Do not hand them drinks. Do not tell them something can't be done. Do not let them say the words. Of course, the galaxy is large. Protocols take time, and humans are notoriously difficult to monitor, especially when they're not trying to cause trouble. The worst part? They still think it's funny. Even now, somewhere on a trade route, a human is probably looking at a broken nav system, sipping a soda, and thinking, hey, maybe if I hit it just right. And when that moment comes when the drink gets passed off, and that infamous phrase is spoken, the galaxy will once again brace for impact. Because humanity's greatest superpower isn't strength, speed, or intelligence. It's this: they don't know when to quit. And nothing in the universe is prepared for that kind of optimism. Galactic containment protocols. Managing the human beverage crisis. It took only 3 weeks after the official classification of humanity as a controlled chaos species before the Galactic Council realized that having a label was not the same as having a solution. The initial hope was that the designation alone, complete with bright red threat tags, urgent interstellar bulletins, and a revised entry in the Intergalactic Species Manual, would be enough to cause allied governments to act with caution. That maybe, just maybe, labeling humans as reality distortion field. Beverage activated would inspire distance, if not outright isolation. It did not. Instead, the phrase "hold my beverage" only became more widespread. Civilizations across the stars began building contingency plans, diplomatic toolkits, and eventually entire agencies devoted to the management of human-induced improbability events. At the heart of the response was a single, increasingly desperate objective: minimize the damage without offending the humans. Because by now, every government, research lab, and trade fleet knew the same hard truth. You couldn't stop them. You could only try to stay out of the blast radius. The Council's first concrete action came in the form of Emergency Protocol 49X, nicknamed the Beverage Barrier. This multi-step defense directive was distributed across every inhabited system within 12 light-years of Earth. It outlined the following mandatory actions. Immediate evacuation zone. Upon detection of the phrase "hold my beverage," an area of no less than 500 meters must be cleared. Civilians are to be evacuated. Reality sensors must be recalibrated. Containment recording requirement. At least one drone or security unit must record the incident for scientific study. Visual and audio logs are to be sent directly to the Central Anomaly Archive. Designated beverage holders. All mixed species crews must designate a single member authorized to hold human drinks. That individual must undergo resistance training and sign a legal waiver. Proactive beverage sequestration. If possible, beverages are to be removed from human access during high-risk scenarios, such as high-stress engineering problems, diplomatic summits, or any situation described by a human as probably nothing. It didn't work. In one case, a human engineer denied access to coffee during a warp drive crisis, simply switched to saying, "Hold my shoe." The results were the same: 2 impossible fixes and a drive core operating at 123% efficiency. So the council pivoted. They introduced Directive 88B, requiring all public spaceports, diplomatic chambers, and mixed species facilities to maintain a small but accessible stockpile of human beverages, not for comfort, but as emergency tools. Coffee, beer, fruit punch, soda, energy drinks, and juice boxes were placed in sealed break glass in case of chaos containers. At first, the idea was ridiculed. But then came the Aether incident. A human intern on a cargo ship docked at Aether Prime noticed the station's artificial gravity pulse was sounding weird. A Relian officer dismissed the concern, noting that all readings were within normal parameters. The human insisted. The officer waved him off. That's when the intern said it. "Hold my Gatorade." He crawled into the subdeck and emerged 9 minutes later. The station's gravity field was now not only stabilized, it had been subtly reprogrammed to allow bouncy mode for improved recreation and zero-injury docking. Within hours, every civilian was using it like a trampoline park. The effect boosted morale and improved muscular conditioning. The council stopped laughing. They commissioned an interspecies task force to develop a unified beverage management strategy, UBMs. Its key points included Standardized Beverage Risk Index, BRI. Every beverage now had an assigned probability distortion rating. Coffee averaged a BRI of 7.1, typically engineering related. Beer scored a 9.2, chaotic physical actions. And juice boxes rated a 10.0 UZ, mostly by children for interdimensional logic or sudden creative breakthroughs. Incident severity tiers. Events triggered by beverages were divided into 5 tiers. Tier 1. Mildly impossible. Egg fixing an airlock with a coat hanger. Tier 2. Physics defying. Egg reversing entropy inside a fridge. Tier 3. Diplomatic anomaly. Egg making sworn enemies hug through interpretive dance. Tier 4. Quantum shift. Egg causing time to skip backwards for 3 seconds. Tier 5. We don't talk about Tier 5. The Beverage Containment Unit, BQ, a compact storage device developed by the Silicon Collective to instantly teleport any human-handled drink to a safe holding chamber if danger is detected. Unfortunately, humans found ways around it by saying things like "hold my sandwich" or "hold my hamster." In short, nothing truly worked. Each new layer of protocol only proved how uncontainable the phenomenon had become. Worse yet, humanity had begun to lean into it, not out of malice, not even intentionally, but with the typical human attitude of, well, if it keeps working. That's how Hold My Beer Consulting LC was born. Founded by 3 Earth citizens who'd collectively caused 27 beverage incidents, the company promised to solve the impossible one drink at a time. They opened offices in 3 galaxies. Their logo featured a cartoon mug flying through space with the tagline, "Got an unsolvable crisis. Hold our beverages." The company's services included warp engine troubleshooting, multi-species negotiations, reality patchwork, exotic peat containment, emergency dance-off arbitration. Within a month, their success rate reached 94%. Their failure rate didn't exist, because even their mistakes tended to accidentally fix unrelated problems. In response, the Council issued Protocol Final 0. All species are advised to either A. Leave the vicinity immediately when a human reaches for a drink, or B. Stay and record the miracle at your own risk. To their credit, many governments have tried to ban the phrase entirely. They've outlawed human beverages in high-risk zones. Some even require all human passengers to sign waivers acknowledging that reality may be subject to abrupt deviation. But every now and then, someone forgets, or underestimates, or assumes this one won't be like the others. And then, a voice calls out across the comms, across a lab, or in a conference room, with that too familiar tone of cheerful chaos. Hold my drink. By then, it's too late. Each new layer of protocol only proved how uncontainable the phenomenon had become. Worse yet, humanity had begun to lean into it. Not out of malice, not even intentionally, but with the typical human attitude of, well, if it keeps working. Earth responds, hold my planet, I've got this. Back on Earth, the galactic headlines hit the news cycle with about the same weight as a celebrity scandal. Most people shrugged. Some laughed. A few influencers tried to turn it into merch. And the phrase reality-altering beverage species trended on social media for exactly 36 hours before being overtaken by a video of a dog piloting a drone. That's how humanity learned they had just been classified by the Galactic Council as a controlled chaos species with beverage-activated reality distortion capabilities. Their reaction? Sounds about right. There were no protests, no emergency meetings, no soul-searching documentaries. Instead, someone printed it on a t-shirt, then someone else made a parody video. And within the week, a startup was born, Hold My Beer Consulting, LC. The company's tagline was simple: if it's impossible, we'll figure it out anyway. Sounded by 4 average Earthlings, none of them scientists, engineers, or diplomats, the company specialized in solving high-risk, high-stakes problems that no one else wanted to touch. Their qualifications included one guy who once fixed a hover car with chewing gum and a keychain flashlight, a retired roller derby coach who claimed to have momentum instincts, a part-time bartender with a black belt in karaoke diplomacy, and a physicist who insisted her equations work better after 2 espressos and a power nap. Within 3 months, Hold My Beer Consulting had offices on 4 planets, a verified galactic trade license, and an ever-growing list of clients. They were the first humans to turn a galactic emergency classification into a business opportunity, and they leaned into it hard. Their service menu included emergency warp drive reboots, last-minute peace negotiation, black hole containment ideas so dumb they just might work, AI de-escalation through interpretive dance, on-demand human inspiration for alien problem solvers. Their most popular package, beverage squad deployment. Send 3 humans with drinks and attitudes to your crisis. What happens? Other species, terrified but desperate, started calling them during no-win scenarios. And more often than not, it worked. Not because they had better tools, not because they knew more, but because, in their words, nobody told us it couldn't be fixed, so we gave it a shot. This casual confidence, the same force that had kept humanity alive through countless disasters, was now a galactic export. The beverage squad quickly became legends. They wore mismatched jumpsuits, carried emergency coolers, and had a habit of ignoring instructions entirely. One of their members, Marcus Mac Rodriguez, famously entered a collapsing orbital station, looked at the diagnostics, and muttered, "Hold my coffee." I've seen worse plumbing problems. The station was stabilized in under 12 minutes. Mac's reward? A statue on the station promenade, a bronze figure handing off a coffee mug mid-stride. Earth didn't stop there. The United Terran Assembly, Utah, issued an official statement to the galactic community. Humanity acknowledges the beverage-based incidents across multiple systems. We will do our best to be responsible-ish. Also, we're flattered. They then passed the Earth Beverage Access Act, mandating that all interstellar vessels carrying human crews must be stocked with a reasonable selection of drinks appropriate for spontaneous feats of reality distortion. Some spaceports resisted. One tried to ban human beverages entirely. It lasted 2 days until a human customs officer said, "Hold my kombucha," and rewired the port's security system to run off old arcade game logic. The new system worked so well, it became standard across 6 systems. Even more unexpectedly, other species began adopting the behavior. The Xri, a stoic telepathic race known for risk-averse bureaucracy, established their own version of the beverage squad, though they called it the Quantum Improvisation Division. The first time one of their members said, "Hold my nutrient paste," and pulled off a miracle repair. The council nearly called for another emergency session. The meme had gone interstellar. Cultural shifts followed. Galactic fashion adopted beverage holsters modeled after human fanny packs. A popular alien music video featured a chorus repeating "Hold my soda" while dodging plasma blasts. Even the Silicon Collective, fiercely logical AI beings, developed a humor algorithm based entirely on beverage incident footage. Earth began hosting the annual Hold My Beer Games, a cross-species competition of improbable tasks judged on creativity, audacity, and lack of planning. Events included warp engine rebuild using only household tools, diplomatic peace treaty via improv comedy, anti-gravity jiggling under emotional pressure, quantum puzzle solving with beverage-themed distractions, the grand prize. A golden beverage holder said to exist in every dimension at once. Or, as one contestant put it, it's basically a cosmic cup holder. Even the former cosmic horror entity that once threatened to devour the universe, now affectionately called Bob, sponsored the event. Bob's quote, translated through 3 languages and a jazz solo, was, "You guys are insane. I love it." Still, not everyone was thrilled. High Counselor Dax, speaking at a closed-door council review, was less enthusiastic. We classified them as a threat. They responded by opening a consulting firm. Admiral Crow, now semi-retired and suffering from beverage-related stress symptoms, replied, "They made it worse. And yet, also somehow better." That's the paradox that haunted the council. Humanity didn't just cause chaos. They also resolved it. Not by undoing the damage, but by steering it into some new, equally strange version of success. The more other species tried to replicate the effect, the more they understood it only worked when humans did it. The unpredictability was the point. The chaos wasn't a bug, it was a feature. And the drinks, they were never magical. They were just rituals, a moment of clarity. A pause before plunging into something stupid and brilliant. Back on Earth, the Beverage Squad's HQ stood beneath a glowing neon sign that read, "To the impossible. Hold my drink and watch this." Inside, the crew was prepping for their next job, something about a rogue moon orbiting backward, a confused AI philosopher, and a sentient waterfall with trust issues. As usual, there was no plan. Just a thermos of hot chocolate, a half-solved Rubik's Cube, and someone mumbling, "Okay, let's make this weird." And somewhere out there, across the galaxy, a warning alert blinked to life. Human beverage event detected. Living with the impossible. The post-Hold My Drink galaxy. 6 months. That's how long it took for the galaxy to stop trying to fix the human problem and start trying to live with it. Because it wasn't going away. The phrase "hold my beverage" had become more than a warning sign. It was a cultural marker, a mimetic trigger, a probability warping event baked into the everyday rhythm of interstellar life. And as much as the Galactic Council wanted to deny it, control it, or even ban it, the reality was simpler and far more terrifying. This was the new normal. The shift began slowly. At first, it was just small protocol changes. Beverage containment units installed on mixed-species vessels, intercom warnings in high-traffic zones, updated training for diplomats on what to do if a human starts reaching for their drink mid-negotiation. Then came planet-wide advisory systems. Entire civilizations adjusted their calendars to include human beverage awareness weeks. Some issued wearable devices that vibrated if a human nearby uttered the fateful phrase. Others leaned into more primitive methods: sirens, lockdown doors, and in one extreme case, emergency confetti cannons, the logic being, if chaos is coming, at least make it festive. And then came the real sign that the galaxy had surrendered: infrastructure. Galactic shipping lanes were restructured around Earth's known travel routes. Civil engineers began designing cities with incident-friendly architecture buildings that could flex, float, or reassemble in the event of a beverage-induced spatial anomaly. Banking systems added new clauses to their insurance policies under active beverage. One planet's legislature passed the beverage clause law. If the human has a drink, do not interrupt them. Even diplomatic etiquette changed. Where once it was customary to offer a drink as a sign of trust, many species now refrained from offering humans anything liquid just in case. Instead, they adopted safe snacks like crackers or dehydrated jelly cubes. Ironically, the only ones who remained truly unaware of the scope of the problem were the humans themselves. Back on Earth, life continued as usual. The Hold My Beer games aired every summer. Beverage Squad merch sold out weekly. Kids traded juice boxes pretending they were probability grenades. No one really grasped that somewhere across the galaxy, an ancient race of time-locked scholars was hiding in a pocket dimension because one of them had heard a teenager on Earth say, "Hold my smoothie, watch this." To humanity, it was still a joke. A phrase before a stunt, a dare before disaster or success. They didn't know the universe was bracing itself every time they reached for a cup. One might think the council could have adjusted eventually, that they'd stabilize, that the sheer volume of incidents would normalize. But the thing is, they didn't slow down. If anything, the frequency increased. Each week brought new reports. A human tourist on a cultural exchange taught an ancient gas-based species how to do the Che-Che slide and ended a civil war in the process. A 14-year-old on a school field trip stabilized a collapsing wormhole after whispering, "Hold my Capri Sun." An Earth-based online influencer caused a rift in dimensional space after attempting to quantum prank his roommate. And in each of these cases, the result wasn't destruction. It wasn't chaos, it was solution through absurdity. That's what made the whole thing so unbearable to the galaxy's most brilliant minds. It wasn't just that humans were unpredictable. It was that they somehow succeeded, over and over again, by doing exactly the things everyone else knew would never work. It wasn't even consistent. Sometimes they used logic, sometimes brute force. Sometimes they just danced, or guessed, or tried the dumbest idea imaginable. Because what if it worked? The council eventually commissioned a new agency, the Human Observation and Response Division, HORD. Its job wasn't to stop the beverage events that was deemed impossible, but to track, study, and, in emergencies, offer commentary. HORD produced weekly situation reports. Here's an excerpt from one, dated Standard Cycle 324-6. Subject: Human bartender Jack Thompson used a cocktail shaker and a whiteboard to explain cross-species debt reconciliation between 6 merchant guilds. Peace achieved. Trade routes restored. One guild now offers mojitos as formal currency, Brie. Beverage Risk Index, 8.7. Species morale, confused but upbeat. As incidents like this piled up, the narrative shifted. Species stopped viewing the phenomenon as an accident of evolution and began accepting it as a form of applied madness. Some even began to mimic it poorly. A Czarn diplomat once attempted to declare, "Hold my water," before diving into a stalled negotiation. The result: fractured alliances and a scandal involving 12 cheese wheels. The original phrase, however, remained sacred. It had to be said by a human, and it had to be said with that tone, that weird mix of reckless confidence and genuine belief. The tone that said, "Don't worry. I probably have no idea what I'm doing, but I'm doing it anyway." As the galaxy continued to adapt, something strange happened. It began to enjoy the chaos. New religions sprang up around the phrase. Some believed the beverage itself held power. Others worshipped the moment the cup was passed, calling it the transfer of burden. Still others saw the humans as divine agents of balanced cosmic gestures sent to patch the holes in logic and reason, by being so unreasonable that the universe had no choice but to bend. At the edge of known space, one AI colony built a monument in honor of the beverage epoch. The sculpture showed a human mid-stride, hand outstretched with a coffee mug, surrounded by distorted gravitational fields and smiling. Schools added courses in applied human logic. Test questions included: if an Earth mechanic says, "Hold my screwdriver," how many minutes until a plasma engine reboots? Translate the phrase, "I saw this in a movie," once into your species' emergency dialect. Even language evolved. Among younger generations of aliens, the phrase "hold my drink" became slang for bravery or foolishness. Sometimes both. "He totally held his drink today" could mean you landed a risky deal or tried to reboot a sun. And through it all, Earths remained. Well, Earths. Humanity never saw themselves as heroes or disruptors. They just wanted to fix what was broken, have a little fun, and maybe teach a silicon-based entity how to play cornhole along the way. So the galaxy watched. It waited. And it learned to laugh a little more, to panic a little less, and to always record when a human reached for their drink. Because in this post-hold my drink galaxy, one thing was certain. If a human smiled, handed you their cup and said, "Hey, watch this," you were about to witness the impossible. Again.